All right, everybody, Happy New Year. So it's Matt Robinson. I steward the ROS Industrial Consortium here in Americas. This is the ROS Developer Meeting for the Americas. I'll touch a little bit more on the schedule, but thanks for jumping in today. So let's get to it. Today's agenda. So today, at least as far as scheduled folks talking, you got me, right? Because I'm going to share kind of some things that are developer facing that we've made some improvements to and enhancements. At least we hope you feel there are improvements and enhancements. Just make sure I have all my tabs open to guide you through. And then I'm going to toss it over to at minimum, David Spielman. I may ask Levi to chime in. I kind of sent an email asking because we have been launching a new Tesseract together. So, and then some real neat discussions going on about some things, improvements coming to Tesseract over time, right? So we can share that and share that kind of get together that's happening periodically around Tesseract. And then, of course, obviously, I'll kick it over to David Spielman. He's going to talk about some things going on in toolpath planning, and that package is called noether. So that's kind of what we got on slate today, and we'll have some time for y'all to chime in about things you're working on or questions you have. So one of the big things, we got an issue last year submitted against one of the repositories. I'm blanking off the top of my head. I do have it pinned, the issue. About more clearly articulating ROS-2 support relative to ROS Industrial. We take for granted for those who attend a number of the different sorts of events we do for ROS Industrial on this platform or in-person events, about the strategy for making things more ROS agnostic actually and providing ROS1 and ROS2 wrappers. But if you're just navigating in through the GitHub repos or heaven forbid landing on a ROS Industrial wiki page, it could be very confusing and not clear at all. So we've been trying to provide some resources to update that. So I should have screen shared and not app shared. So I apologize. So I'm going to pop over to the website and actually step you through a few of those changes. This is screen 2, so that'll make it easier if I just share a screen. I think it is sharing. Yes, it says it is. So you all can yell and scream if it's not. So anyways, this is the ROS Industrial website. I think one of the big things we did is we updated the FAQ. Yes, with an explicit question about supporting ROS2. And obviously being compatible with ROS, because maybe someday there's a ROS3, right? But our goal is obviously, and actually that's where we went with the ROS agnostic approach, right? So there's a graphic that's floating around. Levi actually created it some time ago. And it's basically what we've tried to do. We provide libraries that are somewhat clean, so to speak, right? C++ libraries or pure CMake, and then provide wrappers for ROS1 or ROS2 as best we can, depending on the nature of what the repository is, in which case we create ROS1 and ROS2 variants. So this FAQ has a lot of new information. It states kind of the position. Some of this stuff is obviously old, though I've tried to update it, particularly where links are included. For instance, linking over to ROS2 control, because at a time back when this was originally written in the way back time, there was all this hand waving language about real-time control, but now there are solutions. And we got questions specifically about industrial core. So we are making an explicit choice not to port industrial core that is here. And obviously that drives question about hardware interfaces. And I'll touch on that in a second. And of course, then we explicitly list out these new GitHub or the full list of GitHub organizations. So this is the frequently asked questions. It may answer things that maybe you've had in the back of your mind. So I'd encourage you checking it out relative to ROS drivers and hardware interfaces. The good news is OEMs are releasing them, right? So not long ago, Yaskawa released their ROS2 interface that they support, and we try to highlight those when OEMs support their interfaces. And just this last fall, Mitsubishi Electric released their ROS2 interface, and there's a couple more in the near coming. There is a path for FANUC support for a ROS2 interface. If you need help getting to that, we can provide you guidance. It's sort of officially, unofficially supported. It's a little strange. You have to go through the integrator portal, but it does exist. And also ABB is slated to release a ROS2 interface. It's been imminent since the latter part of last year. We're just waiting for it to drop. But you can see here's their links to actual announcements from OEMs and pages on their ROS2 support. And we're trying to highlight that, right? So in the end, in the ROS1 land, we had community members contribute drivers based on industrial core. But that became tenuous to support because, there's either new controller revisions coming out on manipulators or different models. And so having external people from the OEMs try to maintain that functionality was onerous at best. So in the end, we've tried to pivot to OEMs owning. Obviously, UR was probably the first big industrial manufacturer to do that. And since then, Yaskawa and Mitsubishi and a couple others. And then, of course, like some of the smaller robot companies do support ROS2 out of the box, Canova being a well-known one as well. So we try to highlight and amplify our OEM partners who are supporting their ROS interfaces as opposed to trying to bootstrap it ourselves. So there are some other, obviously, community developed interfaces also you can take advantage of if you have a hard time finding one or have questions about it. We're here to answer those questions. So back to website updates. Up here in the developer ribbon, you'll notice, for instance, all the repos are directly highlighted. Two new ones you may notice, ROS-I repo and the consortium repo are the same. ROS-I Attic is new. So ROS-I repo is getting pretty full with some stuff that was sort of like not really relevant or had not aged well. So as opposed to archiving it or making it not really as available to peruse, we created a GitHub organization for legacy projects that you may still want to reference back to. That is ROS-I Attic. The nice thing is you can still submit issues. You can have conversations around them because they're not archived. They're actually in our organization, but being in the attic is supposed to be explicitly clear that we're not actively supporting it. Tesseract Robotics, some of you may be aware, I see a few names here that have been plugged into what we've been doing around Tesseract. It's a motion planning framework that kind of came about around the same time of getting TrajOpt to work with industrial robotics. Levi Armstrong stewarded a lot of that work and still is the primary driver around Tesseract Robotics. So kudos to all his efforts there and the progress and journey it's made. These link direct to the GitHub repos or organizations, sorry. And since then, we've added READMEs at the organization level. So that's another change. So you'll notice now when you come to a GitHub organization, there's a description on and discussion about a little bit about what's going on with that repository. The other one is now Tesseract Robotics. It does not link directly to the organization. You can get to it here. And then, of course, we tried to bring forward the documentation. And of course, now recently there's a Tesseract monthly check-in. We don't call it a developer meeting per se. It's not as structured as like we try to at least bring some agenda to the developers meeting. But it is literally people interested in Tesseract just getting together and asking questions. Levi's actually recently done some really interesting work. If he's willing to say a few words later, I'll kick it over to him. But this is basically another website update that more properly brings Tesseract under the ROS Industrial Open Source Project umbrella. Hey, we're doing stuff. We have a number of folks. We have educational resources out there that leverage Tesseract. Those of you who attend ROS-I training have been exposed to Tesseract potentially in the motion planning advanced topic. So it just made sense to really bring it forward here on the rosindustrial.org website. So anyways, those are some of the primary updates between the website and the repos. So hopefully you find that helpful. We are efforting standing up read the doc documentation pages to eventually supplant the wiki. I didn't actually make a bullet for that, but that is hopefully as we seek to bring a little bit more robust documentation forward. That's the plan. I did want to touch on a few events. Obviously, thank you. You were here at the Americas Developers Meeting. We move these around quarterly. So if you're interested, this same time on the second Tuesday in February will be the EU Developer Meeting. They run a little different flavor. They may actually roll it out, not on Zoom, but on Teams, so stay tuned. I haven't gotten confirmation, but the AP will also have theirs on the second Tuesday of the month, but theirs will show up in the evening or afternoon US time, because to make it a little bit more appropriate time for Singapore. But you can see the link here and register for the specific region you're interested in. So you're here, so clearly you've registered for Americas, but if you want to add one of the other developer meetings, you're able to do so. We've got our at least March and July events up on the website. I linked March explicitly. I can make this deck available somewhere, but the registration isn't open yet. I'll get that set up maybe as soon as today. And we'll work on maybe what the advanced topic is. We haven't, or focus topic. We haven't settled on that quite yet, but we'll get that information updated on the event occurrence. Right now we're slated for March and July. Both of these are understood to be in person here at Southwest Research at this point in time. We haven't had a member step up and offer to host. So for right now, and then maybe we'll consider one that's online only to enable more people to attend. Obviously, these are included tuition for consortium members, but anyone can attend. There's just a nominal tuition. The consortium member meeting, we're hosting an online consortium member meeting January 16th. I blasted the consortium members about that, so I didn't really bother linking it here. We are going to be at Automate exhibiting and showcasing some sort of ROS-I robot demo. That's the 12th through the 15th in Detroit, Michigan. I didn't include the location, I apologize, but you can Google Automate 2025 and learn all about the details. That's put on by A3. And then the Thursday of that week on the 15th, we'll be hosting our consortium annual meeting. So if you're curious, if you're in Detroit, we typically that week we'll throw together other events as well. So typically Morty in conversations with our friends over at Open Source Robotics Foundation and Intrinsic about some sort of networking event one of the evenings during the week Automate in Detroit. So stay tuned. ROS-Con, as you're aware, we typically exhibit at ROS-Con. We anticipate doing that again. It's in Singapore this fall. So ROS-I AP is going to co-locate their annual event in conjunction with ROS-Con. So more information will come to that as the year goes on. So I imagine they may mention it at their developer meeting in March. So anyways, so some of the things that came up that are very developer impacting is there was this big meeting at ROS-Con. Michael Ripperger, our kind of ROS-I tech lead, stood in person, and I dialed in from somewhere in Colorado. And there was a big question about what can we do to make ROS2 the de facto industrial standard for industrial manipulators. So it led to a lot of different questions, a lot of the challenges. Obviously, ROS Industrial open source project has a number of different approaches to provide that sort of support. And obviously, there's just been questions. Obviously, the switch to DDS was a little bit disruptive. Our strategy to try to get incentivize OEMs to support. You notice here I've shouted out to supporting OEMs again. But one of the things we are seeking to do is provide a best practice that we can provide to the OEMs to enable them to provide interfaces that when you go to leverage them, your experience is as smooth as possible. And you can do the things you want to do. So one of the things that we've seen is a migration to leveraging ROS2 control for interfaces. Not all of them do that, but a number of them do. And we have some obviously practices to kind of sort of speak, make that go smoother. And so if we lower the barrier for OEMs to deliver and support, we're hoping more will do so. And it'd be nice if they sort of coalesced around ROS2 control. The other thing is if you haven't seen this website, Picnic recently published a manipulator interface page. Oops, sorry about that. I was hoping I could just copy it and drop it in the chat. Anyways, like I said, I'll put these slides out where you guys can get them so the links work. But anyways, it is a list, a pretty decent list of where you can find the hardware interfaces. There is some, let's just say, feedback and iteration on that page going back and forth. But it is a pretty quick resource. It's kind of done in the spirit of how we've done the camera survey over at rosindustrial.org. Right. So again, because of our OEM incentivization strategy, we've hesitated doing this because we've just been focusing on highlighting and amplifying stewards who actually put out their OEM supported interfaces. So that's why it's over at Picnic today. There's still debates of where this lives long term, but it's nice to know that that's out there. So, but there's gonna be more stuff coming out around interfaces. So stay tuned. We wrapped up last year, robotic blending milestone 5. We've gone over different things that have come out of this program, but in the fall we released this video. It's just a mashup of like a lot of the stuff that happened. This leverages Scan and Plan Workshop. So obviously we've gone through that in developers meetings in the past. So you can go back to those videos, or you can go over to GitHub, ROS Industrial Consortium Organization, Scan and Plan Workshop, and peruse yourself. But this obviously shows it working in the Foundry. This Foundry sits just west of Columbus, Ohio. And the operators, they're actually training up a new operator right now to run this system. And they've actually run a number of different kinds of parts, and have gotten pretty adept at updating, like say the work holding for these large parts or small parts, and running different kinds of parts. And here we're showing it just doing drag processing, but they're also able to do now push processing with stones, and also change stones. So we're excited. There's a new enhancement that's going to be delivered to this system at some time. Maybe we'll have those developers share those enhancements at that time. So stay tuned. There is a write-up on open source improvements. I've sent this out over LinkedIn and emails out to y'all, but the link is here as well. And it talks about a number of the different impacted repositories and capabilities that are now out there on the back of this program. So that's why I highlighted here. With that said, that's sort of the ROS-I level sort of updates. Any questions before I maybe ask Levi to say a few words about his work on Tesseract? I'll have a sip of coffee. Cool. It's clear as mud, I'm sure. But anyways, feel free to check out rosindustrial.org or the repos. If you have a constructive criticism, submit an issue or just shoot us a note. We take this seriously. Obviously I've gone back and commented on an issue a couple of times, like, hey, we're seriously like still working on this. Sorry, it's been so slow. You know, these issues do get worked. We do follow them, so we appreciate the feedback. Anyways, Levi, do you mind saying a few words about some of the Tesseract stuff that's been going on?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Can y'all hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
All right, good. Yeah, so Matt has linked the issue that we're going to use to kind of track this high level compilation of things that must get done, nice to have wish lists, supporting tasks, things like that, to help us keep on track with getting to a 1.0 release on Tesseract. So I think at the highest level, most of the work is happening in Tesseract motion planning. The goal is to try to get everything to where it's plugin configurable via YAML file. The main missing component that we need to complete is the profiles. So the past month, we did a lot of work to rework all of the profiles to support this YAML config loading approach. So the next piece is to start adding in the infrastructure for the plugin architecture for profiles, and then creating the YAML files for all of the existing profiles and getting all that infrastructure put in place. But there's quite an extensive list here. People have been commenting and adding additional stuff. So if you see things that we have missed that you think is critical to get in there, one of them is like John Watson is talking about, probably want to get some ABI compatibility, CI in place to help us keep track when we're making bad changes, to try to keep us from breaking ABI and things like that post 1.0 release, and following the typical Debian SIDs and stuff like that after we get to that 1.0 release. So there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of work to do. So if anybody's interested in taking on any task, we're always happy to help work with y'all to do any of these things. My plan over the next week or so is to start creating issues associated with each of these that are listed at this top level, to try to get more information on each of these, what needs to actually be done. for that. The other piece that people might be interested in is I would like to get in for the 1.0 is TradgeOpt IFOP. I don't know how many people are familiar. So there was a legacy TradgeOpt that was developed out of, I think, Berkeley, that we ported and we've been maintaining, but it's kind of very fixed to joint space or joint space trajectories. And it doesn't allow you to like customize it very easily. So we had written TradgeOpt IFOP that's built off of IFOP. It's a kind of a generalized framework, but it works, but it's not as performant as a legacy. We were able to figure out what the issue is. So working on migrating it over to how they kind of use it in Tower. The same people that developed IFOP maintain Tower. And I learned a lot from looking at how they leverage IFOP to do that. So hopefully we can get that in, because it is quite a bit faster. Like if you compare the two IK solvers implementations for using TradgeOpt for IK, the IFOP, since it uses a single variable set for just the IK, it's about 25 times faster than the legacy. So I'm hoping we get somewhere around that same benefit once we get things moved over to this new variable set. But we'll know more probably over the next 36 months on that.
Cool. Obviously, this could obviously make progress I mean, these are really great things also, Levi, to keep in mind as we look at different collaborative projects where we can maybe pick these things up as we're doing some sort of application or project too, right? I mean, I think that TradgeOpt IFOP thing, right? There's a couple things we're working on that, like maybe we can pick that up in the scope of some of the things we're actually trying to solve in another application, right? So.
Yeah, because the nice thing about IFOP is now you can introduce new variables, right? Where we couldn't really easily do before. So you could add dynamics variables into it and different variable sets than just joint variables, which is the nice piece about that to take into account.
Yeah.
And there's other work I want to highlight. So there's the HPP FCL might be, we're doing, it's a wish list, but there's been a developers maintainer that's also been helping maintain a lot of the Tesseract stuff. A lot on the ROS-2 side has been creating implementation of HPP FCL. He says it is quite a bit faster than what we're currently using. So there's like Matt was saying, that we may be doing some benchmarking here in the near future to see where that stands, to see if it replaces the default bullet, but we will see.
Yeah, I heard Bullet's not maintained actively anymore.
That's what he said. So I was going to look into that. I haven't had a chance to see if it is or isn't maintained. I was surprised to hear that, but it's possible with things like a lot of the NVIDIA products and the other like physics engines that are coming available, that they may feel that those are just better suited to use.
Yeah. No, I saw some more stuff coming out about GPU accelerated checking in particular. So I know that there's other people poking at that. So
yeah,
it's nice to have the flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I appreciate Levi chiming in. Any questions for Levi while we've got him? And I did include the link to the Tesseract robotics subpage over at rosindustrial.org. You'll find the Tesseract check-in meeting there. So if you have specific interest in Tesseract or just want to learn a little bit more about what's going on, these conversations are happening there. Super informative. Even if like you're like me and I can't contribute, boo. But it is super informative, and it's been fun to get people together and they're actually trying to do cool stuff with Tesseract, right? So if they are interested in that, you can find the registration for that Tesseract check-in at the Tesseract robotics page under rosindustrial.org. Thanks, Levi.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
All right, so up next, I will actually stop sharing because I think David Spielman's going to step us through some stuff. David Spielman's agreed to walk through some work he's been doing on noether. noether is our repository over in the ROS Industrial GitHub organization that focuses on toolpath planning. And in parallel with both all the work we've been doing on blending and some other initiatives in supporting others and leveraging noether, David's done some really great work in making some things a little bit clearer and easier to understand and easier to use. So with that, David, thanks for taking some time today.
Of course, Matt. Everyone hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for those of you who don't know, like Matt mentioned, Nether is a ROS-I, ROS agnostic software that lets us effectively generate toolpath plans and segment meshes for toolpath planning. We use this a lot in conjunction with a lot of our projects, a lot with scan and plan on the recent blending application. We also use it with Tesseract to generate the toolpaths for the robot to basically go through as it goes through the motion plans. And this is just a really useful tool to effectively prep where that we want the robot to go during motion planning. And so in an effort to improve documentation and ease of use of Nether, we are going through a few stages of improving documentation. So right now we have an open PR that I've made to effectively create a tutorial on how to create custom Qt widgets and plugins for Nether. Nether is plugin based, so it's very easy for people to contribute their own custom plugins to create custom toolpaths for whatever sort of toolpath planning they're trying to accomplish. And we've gotten some requests in the past about tutorials for how to create these plugins within Nether. And so I've effectively created this tutorial that for now will live on the GitHub repo, effectively stepping you through the different steps one would need to take to create a toolpath modifier that we've already have that's already comes with Nether, and that's the linear approach modifier. And so this is mostly geared at people who are maybe new to Nether and to Qt. So this may be a little bit too in-depth for those who are familiar with how to create plugins in Qt, but at the very least, it gives a good overview of how we implement plugins within Nether. So I will link this in the chat. Let's see. Once I'm finished sharing, I'll put the link for this pull request in the chat. Another thing I wanted to highlight quickly is we are also in the process of updating documentation for Nether to make it more easy to use. So part of that is in our repo, in our code, we have Doxygen comments throughout, and we're planning on auto-generating Doxygen documentation to make it more easy for users to see how the code is related to each other, give it more proper documentation than what we currently have, which is a bit sparse on the repo. In addition, we're also planning on creating a read the docs format documentation for tutorials, such as the one that I'm showing here, as well as other documentation that shows at a visual level what each toolpath modifier and mesh modifier does. This way, in addition to the tooltips that we have currently in the software, this will give more information for the user to more visually see what all the modifications do. And this is a work in progress, so if anyone has any feedback about documentation and documentation generation that may be different from what we're planning on doing, feel free to use this time to give us that feedback.
Thanks, David. Any questions on Nether for David? I'm gonna not too
generic. Hey guys, this is Sid from Cohesive Robotics. A generic question about Nether. You know, I can't remember if it was the last time at the community meeting or the time before that. We were talking about a possible 1.0 tag and release for Nether as well. Is that still on the cards? Any updates you guys can share on that? Kind of getting to a frozen version of Nether, right?
That's a good question. And that's something we should probably take under advisement as well, right? Like Nether's been around long enough. That's probably fair to do. I think we ended up based on feedback, okay, Tesseract's a bit more of a bigger beast. Maybe we push that one forward first, and Nether might actually be closer to your point, right? So as we do some of this work on Tesseract, maybe Nether could come along on a similar time frame. So I'll take that. I'm jotting that down as like a note, an action item to follow up between David and some of the team here about where we might draw that line in the sand, and then how it relates to the Tesseract 1.0 release. So yep, stay tuned. We'll push out some update on that. That's a good point.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Great. So yeah, obviously Nether's been a key enabler. You'll see it in Scan and Plan Workshop. There's a couple other planners that we've wanted to get woven into Nether that may also impact. So some of you may see some things move around. If you followed the old Swiri Robotics GitHub org, we're trying to clean that up. And there's a couple, I'll say, prototype tool planners that are very relevant to Nether, really make it more capable. So because we're cleaning up Swiri Robotics and some of that work stagnated, right? It's a good opportunity to see where we draw that line relative to 1.0, right? So we've got a few things going on that are Nether-centric conversations. So the timing is really good. So yeah, I look forward to providing some more feedback on that one. Any other questions about ROS2 and ROS Industrial? You think there's any kind of assistance there or things missing? We're happy to take that. Anything on and this is sort of open forum at this point too, right? So if you have questions not related to the specific talking points today, that's fair game too. Now we have a pretty small crowd today. I tried to get a little bit of the word out. I sent out a communication last week, but obviously that's why we record them, right? So everyone can get access to the information. But if there's no further questions or comments, I'll hang it on the line just in case something pops up. But thanks everyone for making it today. The recording will be put up on the ROS-I YouTube channel, and I'll send a note out to news and events, email distribution when the deck is also available. So thanks everyone for making it out today. David, Levi, thanks for taking the time to share kind of what you're working on. And we'll see you guys developer meeting in April. So next month will be the EU. So thanks everybody. Have a great day. Happy New Year.